Coming up, an interview with sexual energy educator Anton Diaz and author of the new book from Atlantic Books, Gaia and the New Politics of Love, Notes for a Polyplanet, Serena Anderlini-D'Onofrio.
Imagine a world where everybody's constantly preoccupied with finding and keeping the right mate. Then, you constantly have this competition. Like, now I found the right mate, now I have to start making sure that I don't lose this right mate, and I become this watchdog that this right mate is going to do exactly what I want, because otherwise, and then if I lose, then I have to start hunting again. And that's a world of competition. It's not a symbiotic world.
Keep listening for more on this fascinating book about the ecology of love for a sustainable planet from writer, activist, scholar, cultural theorist, and professor of humanities at the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez, Serena Anderlini-D'Onofrio.
Here with Serena Anderlini-D'Onofrio.
Serena Anderlini-D'Onofrio.
Beautiful. She's the author of Eros, A Journey of Multiple Loves, and her new book, Gaia and the Politics of Love. And this is a book that's about a polyplanet.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So tell us, first of all, what do you mean by polyplanet?
Well, I mean that some of the practices of love that we've seen develop in polyamorous communities can be useful if we want to create a planet that is more ecological. If we want to create a planet that will live in harmony with us, and it doesn't mean that everybody has to become poly by identity, but simply that these practices, these skills that we use in polyamorous circles, about relating, about sharing amorous resources, about sharing love beyond exclusivity in ethical ways, can be extremely valuable when we try to multiply the resources that we have. Very often we feel that there is a sense of scarcity. There isn't enough to go around. So we hoard more than we actually need because we're afraid that there won't be enough. But if we feel that instead we can share, because the more we share, the more abundant we are in sharing, the more will come back to us because other will share as well, then that scarcity becomes an abundance. So, so expanding these practices of sharing amorous resources beyond the poly communities to wider circles of people who are wondering what is the meaning of love, what is the meaning of exclusivity in practices of love, can really help everybody get more of the love that they need, and it can generate that abundance that we all feel we need around us to be generous as well. And if we consider the crisis that we are in today, the threats of global warming, the idea that everything we're accustomed to as a species that has dominated this planet now for quite some time, and that we often take for granted that this planet has been created for us to use as a resource, whereas we don't think of ourselves as resources per se. We think as users, with the resources created for us. If we want to envisage a future where we will get along with this planet.
You've mentioned Gaia several times at the start of your book. Talk about what you mean by Gaia.
Gaia is a scientific concept, and it's also a vernacular concept. And I will talk about both because in my study I really wanted to embrace both and see them as each other's counterpart and complementary. So the scientific concept is the theory that the whole of the biota, the atmosphere and the biosphere, is a whole being that is symbiotic and is made of many interconnected ecosystems. It's a being with a life of its own. What message are we giving to these young people that we educate, for example, in public institutions, we give the message that love is a crime because we only tell them what is criminal about love. Criminalizing love is the crime. We need to have a new politics of love where love is not the crime. Criminalizing love is the crime. Why? Because when we decriminalize love, then the energy of love moves in the right direction. When we criminalize love, what's the effect? That people become afraid of love, that they desire love. And so then the whole symbiotic system of Gaia becomes traversed by these fears. Fear of love. Love is a crime, so the whole planet is traversed by this fear of love. So all that energy that could be freed up for a loving planet where resources are shared responsibly and consensually becomes a planet that is traversed by these fears. And then becomes a violent planet, a planet dedicated to violence, to aggression, to war, and we've seen enough of that. And we know how ecologically disastrous war is, not just for humans, but for all the environment and all the other beings. And we can't afford it. We really need to shift to a new politics of love where we see this decriminalization. Imagine a world where everybody's constantly preoccupied with finding and keeping the right mate. Then, you constantly have this competition. Like, now I found the right mate, now I have to start making sure that I don't lose this right mate, and I become this watchdog that this right mate is going to do exactly what I want, because otherwise, and then if I lose, then I have to start hunting again. And that's a world of competition. It's not a symbiotic world. What if that person disappears? What if for some reason it doesn't work out with that person? Whereas when we create these networks where people seeking love become part of a network that has various different configurations in them. There could be a couple that is open and a third party that comes in. There could be two couples that are open with each other, or even wider circles. Then we don't need to require that one person to give us everything that we need. We create abundance, because somebody could be willing to give us what that person cannot give us at that time. And that person says, oh, great, then you're going to get this from this other lover. And that's the main concept of the practices of love of polyamory, is compersion. Compersion is this idea that, it's often called the opposite of jealousy, but that's a very simple definition. Compersion is a way to transmute the energy, the negative energy of jealousy, into a positive energy, in the joy of seeing your partner or partners getting the love they want, even if it doesn't come from you. In these expanded families, as they're called in polyamory, expanded family or expanded networks, people don't necessarily have to live in the same place, but networks of emotional sustainability, people who sustain each other emotionally through being participants in these networks, then everybody gets that sense of belonging, that sense of sharing amorous resources, that sense of having enough love in their lives. And it's the same amount of love, but they're not fighting, they're not, hoarding, they're not keeping resources to themselves or appropriating them. If you think ecologically, it's the same thing. All earthlings are, those who inhabit the earth. We are resources for each other. We must be. We wouldn't exist if that were not the case. I think that human beings have claimed ourselves outside of that chain.